Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I am here with my bestie, Shauna, who is below me right now.
Hello, hello.
Um, and I'm Leslie. We are going to break down the new Commander decks for Brothers War, something we love
Mm-hmm.
doing, and so we're excited to chat about them today. Today we're going to bring you actually our take on the Mishra pre-con that has come out. We are going
Mm-hmm.
to break it down, tell you what cards are in it, um, weigh it against a formula that we like to use, and then if you wait until the end, we have some tweaks that we think might make this deck a little bit better. Of course, there's so many tweaks, so we would also love to hear from you how you would tweak this deck if you have any
Mm-hmm.
ideas for us. So, Shauna, tell us about this deck and what it is meant to do.
All right. Well, thank you, Leslie. So this is Mishra's Burnished banner deck. So Mishra, the eminent one, is our commander. He is for two blue, black, and red. So there's lots of interesting things going on with those colors. This deck is about making copies of your artifacts. So this set, Brothers War, is very much about artifacts and stuff and
Mm-hmm.
monsters and big monster artifacts. Um, so you're going to be making copies of just your simple little artifacts and smashing people in the face with them. Plus, there are quite a few enter the battlefield triggers on a lot of your artifacts. So that's going to be able to happen as well, such as card draw or destroying a creature or whatever. There's some of those things that'll happen as well. So there's a lot of that going on. And there are lots of cards that let you copy the abilities of cards that you have. So it's a very not I wouldn't say complicated deck, but it's a deck that you have to pay attention to your triggers and planning ahead of what you need to do. So you'll be spending your turn figuring out what you're going to do on your next turn because people don't want to be waiting for you to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of
Good
planning
point.
involved with this deck, which is really fun and a little challenging, but not so challenging that it's totally scary for you. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not a beginner deck, but it's certainly going to give you some challenges if you are looking to amp up your game a little bit.
Yeah, not
So
an
that's kind of
expert
fun.
deck, but not a beginner deck. So right in the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
intermediate, you've been playing a little bit
Yeah.
and you want
Yeah.
to challenge yourself, so to speak.
Exactly. So Mishra is at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of a target non-creature artifact that you have, except it becomes Mishra's war form, and it's a 4/4 construct that gains haste until end of turn, and then you have to sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So again, you're going to be smashing face with that. You're going to be doing those enter the battlefield triggers. You could possibly use that for some sacrifice fodder if you black and red tends to have a lot of ways to sacrifice things. So
Mm-hmm.
there's maybe that in there as well. It also has the alternate commander suggested of Ashnod, the uncaring. She is the same mana cost and has a one forward's death touch. And whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So again, you can go a different direction with that sacrificing and stuff like that with that commander. So that's in the long story. That's how this deck is meant to work. Leslie's going to tell
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit about the deck's
The goods.
breakdown.
Mm-hmm. So we like to look at our decks and just see kind of where we're at as far as types and colors and all of that fun stuff. So when we look deeper into this deck, we do see that there are 21 creatures in this deck. A lot of those are artifact creatures, of course, because Mishra, being the evil Phyrexian overlord that he is, has control of a lot of artifacts. Um, we see also that there are 11 sorceries in instance and about 30 other artifacts in this deck. So really, really artifact heavy. Land, we see 37, which is a decent number, but we'll get to that in a second. When we look at our mana value and our mana curve, there are approximately 5 at 1 mana cost. We see 16 at 2 mana cost. 12 at 3, and sorry there, I gotta do adding.
That's okay.
11 at 4, 3 at 5, 4 at 6, and 5 at 7. We do see that there's one at 9 mana cost and another one at 11 mana cost. Those are our big beefies. But there's a lot of ways to, number one, mana ramp, as well as try to cast your artifacts for less in this deck. So some of those
Mm-hmm.
higher mana cost things aren't going to be a huge problem in this deck, but it's a fairly even mana curve across the board. We still see most of our stuff at 2 and 3 and 4 mana cost, which is a good thing to see so that you aren't stalled out waiting to cast all of your big stuff. As far as color breakdown goes, of course, 46% of this deck is colorless. And then we see 25% at blue, 27% at red, and 17% is black. So those ones are fairly close, more red heavy. There's some artifact removal in red, which is nice if you're playing against the other artifact deck, but won't necessarily do you well against other decks. So you might want to consider that when you're tweaking as well. So that's the breakdown of this deck as far as those things go. But we're going to go into each of the cards individually and weigh them against what they do. So why don't you tell us about how we're going to do that, Shauna?
Alrighty. So we follow a little formula that Wizard seems to follow for the most part too. And when Leslie and I build decks, we usually follow this formula pretty much always because it's really effective actually. So that's your one commander. Then we have ramp cards that get you your mana there. So there's about 15 of those. Removal, removal, removal. You always got to have removal. So there's about 15 of those. Card draw, about 13. Your high impact cards, which are cards that are going to basically get out and you'll win the game if the opponent doesn't deal with it. So about 12 of those. And then you've got some other win conditions, other cards on theme, other cards that support your high impact cards. So that's about 10 of those. And then about 34 lands is kind of what we think of. So we compare each of these decks as they come out to those numbers. And so the very first section we have is ramp and mana generators. And the formula calls for 15. And this deck seems to have about 13. I'll let Leslie tell you about the first card.
Sure. And with our formula too, we always say those are recommended numbers. You can go up
Right.
and down. So 13 is right on par there. It's right very close to 15. The first one is Cursed Mirror for 2 and a red. We have an artifact that taps for red mana. And when it enters the battlefield, you can have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until the end of turn, except it has haste. So not only is it a mana generator after that, but when it comes onto the battlefield, you can copy something on the battlefield. It doesn't have to be yours. So that's a really cool thing too. And you can swing with it right away. So nice little mana ramp card there.
Yeah. Then we have Machine God's Effigy. It is a little 4-cost artifact that says you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact. And it has tap for blue. And it's not a creature if you do that. Or you can add blue mana with it. So again, this could be any creature on the battlefield that you could have to make this.
Yeah, same as the
Scary.
Curse Mirror, but this one it looks like it stays, right? It doesn't say till the end
Yeah.
of turn.
Yeah.
So
But if you use it
that's
for mana, it's not a creature. I think that's what that means.
no, it's a creature that taps for mana.
Okay.
You have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, right? And then it just stays that
Yeah, I'm
creature.
just wondering what the it's not a creature
Oh,
in
I see.
brackets means.
I
I
see.
think
So
it
if
becomes
you tap
not a
it.
creature if you
Oh,
tap
so
it for mana.
that's actually a really good point then
Oh, you
because
could protect it.
you can protect it. It's a creature, but
Oh,
then if someone does like destroy all creatures, you can say, "Oh, I'm going to just tap this for mana." Doesn't matter if you
yeah,
use that mana.
good point. Good point.
Like it. I like it. Okay,
That's cool.
Dreamstone Hedron. I
Uh,
like this card. It taps for 3 colorless. In this deck, you're going to need
mm,
some colorless. This is perfect for this deck. And not only that, it also fits into our draw category because you can sacrifice it and draw 3 cards when you no longer need the mana. So,
yes. And Felwar Stone is add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So that's a nice little thing that you can use for mana or turn it into a 4/4 creature later on. Woohoo!
and then we have Hedron Archive and Soul Ring are both tapped for 2 mana. Hedron Archive is also another one that you can use to draw cards, so it fits in both of those categories. Everyone loves some good ramp that way.
Everyone loves some good ramp. Thran Dynamo, speaking of good ramp, it costs 4, but it taps for 3 colorless. And Arcane Signet is the new commander stable that taps for mana and your commander's color identity.
Yep,
which
that's
is very
great.
nice.
Commander Sphere, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Also, commander staple. And you can sacrifice this one to draw a card. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. It's also got 2 signets, the Demir signet, which is the pay 2 for, pay 1, and then you get to add blue and the black. And then it also has the Rakdos signet that does the same thing for the black and the red. So those are good staples to have in this deck.
And my Mycosynth Wellspring, it enters the battlefield, or whenever it enters the battlefield or is put into the graveyard, you can search your library for that land that you need, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So nice that you can do that twice, because if someone destroys artifacts or something like that, then you get another land.
Yeah, and that's a really good one to turn into a creature and sacrifice it, because why not?
Very Phyrexy in that one.
Exactly. Wayfarer's Bauble. It is for 1, and you pay 2 and sacrifice it and search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped. So, yeah. So keep these things in mind when you're thinking about this deck.
So our next section is removal, and we always say this is one of the most important sections next to high impact cards. Our formula calls for 15. This deck only has about 10, so it's a little low on removal, which we can maybe suggest some tweaks later. But our first one, why do I get the ones that are hard to say?
I know.
Terrasseries Devastation for X2 and 2 black. So whenever you see X in the mana cost, if you're new to Magic, that means you can choose what X is. So if you decide that X is 4, it just adds an extra 4 to the mana cost. So you can decide what that is. So you will lose X life and create X tapped Power Stone tokens. Then, we can't see it.
Oh.
Because of your background. It's okay.
Oh, right.
I'll put it up on the screen. Then all creatures get -1/-1 until the end of turn for each artifact you control. So you will have some power stones that you just created that are artifacts. You will also have a bunch of artifacts probably on the battlefield already, but if you need to kind of like do the math beforehand, figure out what X is. Plus the power stones are great because once they're on the battlefield, you can use them tap to add colorless mana. So having a bunch of power stones is just going to help you in the long run.
Yeah. So good. Oblivion Stone for 3. It's an artifact that you can pay for and tap and put a fate counter on target permanent. And then for 5, you can tap and sacrifice the Oblivion Stone and destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter on it. Then remove all fate counters from all permanents. So that could be interesting.
Save your own stuff.
Some of your colorless mana into that.
Yeah.
Make copies of that.
Spine of Ishsa. We have a 7 mana cost artifact, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy target permanent. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you get to return Spine of Ishsa to its owner's hand. So you just keep getting to put it back into your hand and then enter the battlefield with it and destroy target permanent again. Ongoing removal. That's a really good card.
Yes, this is definitely one that you want to turn into that creature because its enter the battlefield trigger is so awesome.
It does cost 7,
Uh,
so that's expensive, but you
yes.
have lots of power stones and stuff. You won't worry about it.
Yeah. Executioner's Capsule for black. I really like this card. I don't know why I do. I have it in quite a few commander decks, actually. It's a little artifact that lets you pay 1 in a black and tap it to sacrifice it and destroy target non-black creature.
I think it's
It's
because it
really
sits on
cheap
the
for a low ball.
battlefield and it's kind of like a don't mess with me.
Threat.
It's a
Yeah.
threat,
Yeah.
which is probably why you like it.
Maybe.
Nihil Spellbomb for 1. You can sacrifice it and exile all cards in target player's graveyard. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay black if you do draw cards. So it gets you a little bit of card draw, but this is another sit it on the battlefield and be like, don't mess with me, or I may just tap this and exile your graveyard, which might slow some people down.
So, question.
Yeah.
If you copied this one,
Mm-hmm.
you don't swing with it. Instead, you use, because it has haste, you use this tap ability. Anyways, sacrifice the token that you make and exile all cards from someone's graveyard. So do that with a copy of it. And you pay the 1 and draw a card. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of a useful little thing you could do with that creature token that you're making of the spell bomb. Mm-hmm. Couldn't you?
Oh, right? How are you
don't
copying
have to necessarily swing with it. You're copying it with Mishra's ability, turning it into a creature, but instead of attacking with it, you just tap it, exile all cards from your opponent's graveyard. Then you, because it does die, when it's put into graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay a black, and if you do, draw a card.
Yeah.
So you can just have it sitting there all the time and just do that whenever you want, kind of thing.
Yeah, if you just have it sitting there and then use Mishra to copy it. Yeah, that's the beauty of Mishra. I think that's the point, right, of this deck is you can take advantage of, that's a good example of one that you can take advantage of an ongoing thing if you need card draw or you just want to get rid of everybody's graveyards for a bit.
And tokens do hit the graveyard, folks, but they just don't stay there. Yes.
Yeah. Another thing to note, because this is a very artifact heavy deck, a lot of times, like any creatures that come onto the battlefield that have a tap ability, you cannot use the tap ability right away because it has summoning sickness and you just can't use anything that makes your creature move, either attack or tap or anything like that on the first turn. But artifacts are not the same if it's just static artifact. So this spell bomb does not have summoning sickness. You could use it the first turn it comes out.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway. What's the next card, Leslie? Or is that me?
It's your turn. Yeah.
That's me. Blasphemous Act. I hate this card. I hate and love it at the same time.
You use it all the time.
And a red. I have used it several times. It's a sorcery that costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. So, yeah. You're going to do this to the opponents. You're going to deal 13 damage to each creature, and then you're going to turn all your stuff into creatures, and then you're going to kill them with your artifacts. It's very mean.
Yeah.
It's mean.
Feed the Swarm for 2 is a sorcery, which means it can only be cast in one of your main phases. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to the permanent's mana value. So just be cognizant of that.
You get Chaos Warp. Another card I love to hate. It is for 2 and a red, an instant that says the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. Take a chance with that one.
Take a chance on me. Bedevil for 3, 2 black and a red. I love this one because it's destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. So lots of versatility here. And especially with this particular set, if you're playing against the others, the artifact removal is great.
Yeah. Speaking of artifact removal, here is a braid. They had to include that in here too, in case you're playing against the other one. For 1 and a red, an instant that says you can deal 3 damage to target creature, or you can destroy target artifact. So yeah.
So the nice thing about this deck is that in card draw and tutors, the formula calls for 13, and this deck has 19 card draw. So you will be able to get what you want probably fairly easily with this deck because you're going to be drawing cards on a regular basis. Muzio Visionary Architect for 1 and 2 blue is a 1/3 that has a special ability that allows you to pay 4 and tap. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the highest converted mana cost among artifacts you control. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it onto the battlefield, so you don't even have to pay for it. Put the rest on the bottom of your library. So we talked about this deck putting things out for free, which means you don't necessarily need as many mana generators, as well as just people will hate you because you don't have to pay for things.
Yes. So this card itself isn't a high impact, but you can use it to get your high impact cards. So
yeah. Which in essence is kind of high impact. So yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joyra Weatherlight Captain is a 3/3 for 2, blue and a red. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. She's so good in this deck. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And another great artifact deck card is Emery, Lurker of the Lock for 3. It's a 1/2. It makes your spells cost 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. So again, this can go in the mana ramp category. But when it enters the battlefield, you mill 4 cards. And so this is the tutor portion of it. You can tap her and choose a target artifact card from your graveyard and cast it this turn. So it doesn't matter if they get rid of your artifacts, because if you have her out, then you can bring them back. She will be a target once you get her out.
Yeah, or even if you've sacrificed your command spear or whatever to draw cards, you can get them back. It's so useful. Padim, Consul of Innovation. This was one of my son's favorite cards when we were first playing Kaladesh, when we first started. We have quite a few copies of this one in my house because he is a 1/4 for 3 and a blue, and artifacts you control have hexproof. And Kaladesh had a lot of artifacts. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest converted mana cost or tied for it, you get to draw a card. So, yeah.
And you probably will. Yes. Audacious Reshaper for 3. I love the art on this card. It is so gorgeous. Just like two besties reading a book. Exactly. It's a 3/3, and you can tap to sacrifice an artifact and reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card onto the battlefield without paying its mana cost, and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Audacious Reshaper deals damage to you equal to the number of cards revealed this way. So there is a bit of a kickback on that.
Yeah.
But again, anytime you can put something out for free is great.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. Glint Raker for 3 and a blue. It's a 1/3 Drake with flying. And it gets +X/+0, where X is the highest mana value among artifacts you control. So maybe 10. Who knows? Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Put an artifact card revealed this way into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So you're putting stuff in your graveyard, but you're going to have stuff to get it back. So that's all right. Yeah.
Especially Amari. Farid, enterprising, salvager. See, this is what I don't like about these the old frames, is they're really hard to read, in my opinion. Legendary creature human soldier. Whenever a non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get to create a colorless artifact token named Scrap. You can pay 2 and sacrifice an artifact. Choose one. Put a 1/1 counter on Farid. It gains menace until the end of turn. Goad target creature or discard a card, then draw a card. So you're basically just going to be creating these scraps of artifact that then you can use to sacrifice them and do one of these abilities, which is great. Goading is another great form of removal, so this can fit in that category. But discarding a card and drawing a card is fantastic.
You can do that more than once, too.
Yeah.
Smelting Vat is a 4-cost artifact that says pay 1 and tap it and sacrifice another artifact. Reveal the top 8 cards of your library. Put up to 2 non-creature artifact cards with total mana value less than or equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Could be potentially big.
Idol of Oblivion is a 2 mana cost card that you can tap to draw a card. Activate only if a creature only if you created a token this turn. Lots of token creation in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can pay 8 and tap to sacrifice it and create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. So not only do we have Phyrexians in our deck, we have some Eldrazi. But the nice tap to draw a card on a regular basis is great.
Mm-hmm. Trading Post for 4. It's a little utility artifact that's pretty fun. You pay 1 and tap it to discard a card. You gain 4 life, sorry. Pay 1 and tap it. Pay 1 life, create a goat, a 0/1 goat. Pay 1 and sacrifice a creature. Return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. 1 and tap it. Sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. So whatever you need.
Mm-hmm.
Got lots of options there. At
the last two are probably the ones that you're going to use in this, though.
Probably, yeah.
Ichor Wellspring for 2. When it enters the battlefield, you get to put into it gets put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Yep. You get to draw a card.
Another good one to copy and get its effects. Mind Stone for 2. It is a ramp card, but it's, in my opinion, used for its second thing, sacrificing it and drawing a card. Yeah. Pretty cheap card draw, really.
And Mnemonic Sphere, beautiful little mnemonic sphere for 2. You get to pay 2, sacrifice it, and draw 2 cards. It also has Channel, which you can pay 1 and discard it to draw a card. So the Channel would be something you would do when it's in your hand versus on the battlefield. When it's on the battlefield, then you would do the 2 mana cost. So drawing 2 cards for 2 or drawing 1 card for 1.
Yeah. Prophetic Prism, another good one to copy. For 2, it's an artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, or you can pay 1 and it becomes a mana for you as well.
Yeah, I do like how a lot of these are dual purpose.
Definitely.
Within this deck. Yeah. Expressive Iteration. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand. Put 1 of them on the bottom of your library and exile 1 of them. You may play the exiled card this turn. So basically, you're getting 2 cards out of the deal, 1 in your hand and 1 in exile. And as long as you have the money to pay for them, you could do both if you really wanted to.
It's a really good card. It's banned in Pioneer for a reason.
Yep.
So out of control. Thoughtcast. This one has, it's for 4 and a blue, but it has affinity for artifacts. So if you have a whole bunch of these Power Stones, that sort of thing out, it costs 1 less for each of those. So you could easily pay only 1 blue to draw 2 cards. So that's really good.
One thing too to remember, especially with this deck, is you will see in your deck artifact lands. You will have artifact creatures. You will have just regular artifacts. And those all count as artifacts. So sometimes people forget, oh yeah, this land is an artifact as well, and I'm going to count it. Even seasoned players, we all forget. It's like, oh yeah, we have artifact lands. So technically that costs even less. So you're probably just going to be paying 1 for this. Faithless Looting for 1, you get to draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. It also has a flashback, so you can play it from your graveyard for 3, and it just allows you to do the same thing again.
Yeah. And then Factor Fiction. This is a really good blue staple for 3 and a blue. It's an instant to reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. We have a friend who says that he always just lets people have all 5 cards.
Yeah, that's an option.
Nice
you can put all 5 in. Yeah. Do what's best for you. Thirst for Knowledge for 3 is an instant. This is our last card. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact. Likelihood is you're going to have an artifact to discard, so you only have to discard 1 of them instead of 2.
Alrighty, so here we are at the high impact cards section. So the formula calls for 12. The deck only has like 9 game winning cards, but like we were saying, a lot of those card draw cards are high impact because they let you go and find these high impact. So the chances of you getting your high impact cards is quite a bit higher in this deck than compared to others. So the first one we have is Geth, Lord of the Vault. This is one of my favorite cards. It's for 4 and 2 black, a 5/5 zombie with Intimidate, which means this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures or creatures that share a color with it. So he can get in for damage potentially quite a bit there. Or and sorry, not an or and you can pay X and a black and put a target artifact or creature card with converted mana cost X from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. Then that player mills X cards. So you're going to be stealing their good stuff with this guy.
Yeah.
Because you're mean.
So both of these decks for Brothers War are blue, black, and then another color. Yeah. So this one happens to be blue, black, red. The other one is blue, black, white. So think about that too. If you're looking at one of these decks and trying to decide, you might want to buy both and then mesh them together to be like, here's the best of both of those decks. Yeah. But that would go well in the other deck as well. Herald of Anguish is our next high impact card for 5 and 2 black. So it is pretty costly, but you have a 5/5 and it has Improvise. So Improvise is a little different than Affinity because it allows you to use your artifacts to help cast the spell, which basically just means you can tap them for colorless mana. So if you have a bunch of Power Stones, those are already tapping for mana. But let's say you have like little Thopters or even just an artifact creature that you have out on the battlefield, you can tap it for colorless mana to help cast this spell. It's flying. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent discards a card, which is ongoing, which is fantastic. And you can pay 2 and sacrifice an artifact. Target creature gets -2/-2 till the end of turn. So not only is it a flying 5/5, it has ongoing removal by making them discard as well as getting rid of some of their creatures. Herald of Anguish is anguishing.
Definitely. Fane the Broker is a 3/3 for 2 and a black. It is a human warlock that has lots of stuff on it. So you can tap and sacrifice a creature, put 2/1/1 counters on a target creature, tap him. You can tap him to remove a counter from a creature you control and create a treasure, which is really handy. Or you can sacrifice an artifact and create a 2/1 white and black flying inkling. Or you can pay 4 to untap him. So lots of options. That's why he's high impact in my mind, because he's a pretty good body. Plus he just does stuff. Lots of stuff.
Yeah. And you can do that because you can tap him and then pay 4 to untap and do something again, right? Yeah. Hellkite Igniter is another 7 mana cost 5/5 flyer with haste, and this one has pay 2 and it gets +X/+0 until the end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. So it has fire breathing that is connected to the number of artifacts on the battlefield, which is really good in this deck.
Then the big Metalwork Colossus for 11, a 10/10 for 11, and it costs X less to cast, where X is the total converted mana cost of non-creature artifacts you control. Whew. And you can sacrifice 2 artifacts, return this guy from your graveyard to your hand. So, yeah, he's good.
And because he doesn't have a color attached to him, he could potentially be free if you have 11 non-creature artifacts on the battlefield.
I've played him for free before.
Yep. Traxos Scourge of Krog is a 4 mana cost 7/7, and you're like, what? 7/7 for 4? Well, he does enter the battlefield tap, and he doesn't untap on your untap step. However, if you cast a historic spell, you get to untap him. Artifacts are historic spells. Also are legendary creatures or any legendary anything. So are sagas, and so you're going to be able to untap it no problem before combat, because you're probably going to have an artifact in your hand to cast.
Definitely. Then we have Blast Furnace Hellkite for 7 and 2 red. Another big, huge cost flying 5/5 dragon. This one has double strike though. So it's actually a 10/10 for 9, really, honestly. Yeah. And has Artifact Offering, which means you may cast this spell as though it had flash by sacrificing an artifact and paying the difference in mana cost between this and the sacrificed artifact. mana cost includes color. So if you sacrifice one of your artifacts, that's a high cost. That will help you pay for this, and you can do it on the opponent's turn. And all of a sudden, yeah. And creatures attacking your opponents have double strike. So that's where it's really fun to have this flash. All of a sudden, you're getting in with your creatures, and all of a sudden, this guy comes out, and suddenly those creatures have double strike, and they didn't block. Sorry for your being dead.
It's a great way to just kind of do those finishing moves on your opponent. Someone's attacking someone else, and you just flash it out and go, oh, by the way, those have double strike.
So sorry.
You make some friends, you lose some friends. Scavenged Brawler for 6. It's a 4/4 with flying, vigilance, trample, and lifelink. You can pay 5 and exile him from your graveyard and choose target creature to put 4 1/1 counters, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is one too that people won't it's bad. They'll want to kill it, but they won't want to kill it because then you can add all those things to, like, say, your Metalwork Colossus and give it 4 counters and lifelink and vigilance and flying. So it's really high impact because they don't know what to do with it. It's like bad all the way.
Oh my god. Alrighty, so Lithiform Engine for 4. This is a legendary artifact that says, again, really useful. You can pay 2 and tap it and copy a target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, so you can be copying Mishra's abilities. Pay 3 and copy target instant or sorcery you control. You may choose new targets. And 4, you can copy target permanent spell you control. The copy becomes a token. You copy your Metalwork Colossus, maybe? I don't know. Oh, dear.
So our last section is our other cards on theme. These are ones that support your high impact cards or support the deck in some way, shape, or form and just make it that much better. So our formula calls for 10. This deck has about 11, so that's right on par for this. And the first one we have is Silas Wren, Seeker Adept for 3. He's a 2/2. He has Death Touch, which is nice. It slows people down. And when it deals combat damage to a player, which they won't want to block, you get to choose a target artifact card in your graveyard and cast it this turn. So you do get to go and bring things back from the graveyard if they don't block, or it forces them to block and potentially kill something that they didn't want to kill.
It's important to note that he is an artifact as well.
Yes.
So you can return him later. With a card like Master Transmuter for 3 and a blue. Well, no, I guess this one. Well, yeah, no. But you can save him with this. Return an artifact you control to its owner's hand. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. Pay blue and tap the transmuter to do that. For free. You can put out the Metalwork Colossus. Well, not for free, for blue.
Well, yeah, you're going to basically be switching your artifacts, right? Yeah. So you can put your Thopter or your Power Stone back into your hand, sacrificing it basically because it's a token, and then put something bigger.
Good point.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that you can do that. Just put one of these back in your hand. Play your... Nice. I didn't even think of that, Leslie. You're so smart.
That puts that into a little bit more of a higher impact card, but it is conditional because you have to have other things to sacrifice, which is why it's in the support. Workshop Elders for 7 is a 4/4. Artifact creatures you control have flying, which is amazing. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target non-artifact creature you control become a 0/0 artifact creature. If you do, you put 4 1/1 counters on it. So that is something that happens at the beginning of combat each turn. And it's just you're just gonna keep creating 4/4 creatures, and all your stuff has flying. So really great card there for support.
Slow bad. He's slow and he's bad. Goblin Tinkerer. For 1/2, an artificer that says sacrifice an artifact and target artifact gains indestructible to end of turn. So he's out there to help you protect your big artifacts that you don't want to die.
Yep. So Brutaclad, Telcor Engineer for 6 is a 4/4. Creature tokens you control have haste. So now they have haste as well as flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to create a 2/1 bloomer artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So basically, you're just going to be changing things into other things. And remember that your commander creates 4/4 tokens out of your artifacts, and so now your 2/1s can potentially become 4/4s as well, and it just makes everything better.
Yeah. We have Ashnod in this section as well because, again, it's kind of conditional. So she'd have whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So there's not a lot of sacrifice stuff going on in the deck so far that you've noticed. And so it's kind of, if you're going to build around her for one thing, you could do that. But otherwise, it's kind of a conditional card, in my opinion. Yeah.
Another good artifact, it is a 7 mana cost artifact though, is permanents you control have ward 2. So basically what ward means is that they have to pay 2 extra to target them in whatever they're doing. At the beginning of your end step, you get to mill 2 cards, then exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So you're just going to shuffle up or spread out, let someone choose something for you, and then you can potentially get something from your graveyard back.
Mirror Works is an artifact for 5. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, you create a token that's a copy of that artifact.
And Strionic Resonator. For 2, you can copy target triggered ability you control, and you choose new targets for the copy. So a triggered ability is something that happens when something else happens. So whenever you'll see whenever or when or at your end step or those types of words. So this happens, so this happens. That's a triggered ability versus a static ability, which is something that is just on the card. So ward is a static ability, menace is a static ability, flying is a static ability. It's just there, and that creature always has that. And then you have activated abilities, which have a cost. So this one in particular has a cost of 2, and tapping it to make something happen. So that's something you have to activate. So that's the difference between all of those, triggered and activated, which is why this deck is a little bit more complicated, because you have to know what those abilities are, when to use them. And so all these support cards are actually what makes this deck a little bit more complicated to play.
Yeah, definitely. But powerful to get all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
Oni Cult Anvil, this is an example of actually a support card that's actually going to be really powerful for you, because it's a little artifact that whenever one or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield during your turn, create a 1/1 colorless construct, little dude. This ability triggers only once, but still, every time those tokens are dying, because they are, you get to make another one. It's just a little 1/1, but hey, it's a little artifact. And then you can tap this guy and sacrifice an artifact and deal 1 damage to each opponent. You gain 1 life. So I've seen people do crazy things with this annoying little card. It's actually really powerful once you get going, especially with artifact stuff.
So something we didn't put in this deck is tweaks. So I'm going to skip ahead to that, but it just made me think of this because you were playing it last night. But Skull Clamp would go well with that.
Oh, duh. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Skull Clamp, I'll put it up on the screen, whichever side it's on. I don't know.
Definitely.
Basically, you can equip it, and it gives that creature +1/-1. So, and then you can draw 2 cards. Yeah. So all of these little Thopters that you're creating, basically, whenever one or more artifacts you control leaves the battlefield during your turn, you get to create a construct. So you're going to be equipping Skull Clamp, that thing is going to die, and then you're going to be creating another one anyway, and you can just keep, it's a a circle that as long as you have mana to equip, then you're going to be able to um, draw cards on a regular basis. So, I
Yeah.
mean, not that this deck needs card draw, which is why we didn't think of it, but anyways,
You want to get to those bombs and win the game,
you want to
right?
get to the
So
stuff. Yeah.
ultimately, then we have a little servos schematic, a little 2 cost artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, put it in the graveyard. I played this yesterday. It created 1/1. Yeah, or put in the, yeah, create a 1/1 servo artifact creature token. I'm pretty sure I played this one. I can't remember. I did a servo thing anyways. So they're good little guys to have around in the pinch.
Yeah. As far as land goes in this deck, we won't really break down all the land. There is 37. That's actually a decent amount. We recommend 34 for a deck. A lot of people think that's not nearly enough, but it really depends on your play style. 37 is a decent amount, but I will point out that there are a number of good artifact lands that are also indestructible in this deck. So if nothing else, if you don't have any of those artifact lands, this deck is worth picking up.
Yeah.
So we're on to our tweaks, which is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Ooh.
What did we think this deck needed? Again, these are just some examples, our opinions. Yeah. There's lots out there, and we want to definitely hear what you would do. So what are our tweaks there, Shauna?
All right. Well, the first one we have is a little affinity for artifacts card, Slag Strider. That's 5 and 2 red, but it's got that affinity thing. So hopefully it's only going to cost you the 2 red. And you get to pay 1 and sacrifice an artifact, and it deals 1 damage to any target. So we were just thinking of having stuff, all these little artifacts are dying and stuff. Why not have things do some damage to your opponent?
Yeah.
For that.
Your commander is creating something that is going to have to be sacrificed on the end step anyway. Mm-hmm. So sacrifice it before your end step, because you can't sacrifice it. You have to sacrifice it before that happens and do some damage with it. Yeah. So, yeah. Garna, Blood Fist of Keld for 1 black and 2 red is a legendary creature human berserker 4/3. Whenever another creature you control dies, again, your stuff is going to be dying at the end of the turn. You get to draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And I love that this is each opponent. So you're just doing potentially, depending on how big your play group is, if you have a full table still, probably 3 damage just by your artifact dying at the end of its turn.
And that's just 1 artifact. You could have a whole bunch of them dying.
Yeah, exactly. Someone does a board wipe and kills all your servos. They're not going to want to do a board wipe now because that's going to do 20 damage to each opponent.
Definitely. Darksteel Forge for 9. It's an artifact that says artifacts you control are indestructible. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Kind of a no-brainer.
Yep. Protect your stuff.
Yeah. Deathbringer Thoktar for 4 and a black and a red is a zombie beast 3/3. Whenever another creature dies, you may put a 1/1 counter on this guy. You can remove a 1/1 counter from him and do 1 damage to target creature or player. So build him up, remove as many counters as you need, and you have some targeted removal. Remember, this deck did not have a lot of removal in it, so this would be a good option for that.
Yes, and again, you're having lots of stuff die, so you can just put tons of counters on this and take as much as you want off.
Yeah.
Have some fun. Reclusive Artificer for 2 and a blue and a red. It's a 2/3 Artificer with haste. When it enters the battlefield, you may have it deal damage to target creature equal to the number of artifacts you control. Ooh, sorry, that might be a lot.
Yeah. Another good removal. Tezzeret, Master of Metal. Of course, Tezzeret, the king of artifacts, is good in any artifact deck. 4 and a blue and a black for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. So he comes out with 5. For those of you that are new to Magic, planeswalkers are a different type of card. They're like a player in the sense that you can swing at them and attack them versus creatures which you can't necessarily attack directly. So he comes in with 5 life, so to speak, and you can put 1 counter on him to reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card into your hand and the rest of the bottom of your library in random order. So some nice going through your deck. -3, target opponent loses life equal to the number of artifacts you control. So some player removal there. And -8, you get to gain control of all artifacts and creatures target opponent controls. So if you are playing against that Urza deck that's out there or any other artifact deck, now you can just -8 and steal him. Again, as we said, a lot of this would go well in the Urza deck as well. So if you haven't checked out our other video, then go check out our other video because some of the tweaks would work in both decks.
Mm-hmm. We've got Braids, Conjure Adept for 2 and 2 blue. It's a 2/2 little human wizard that says, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put an artifact, creature, or land card from their hand onto the battlefield. Oh! Each player, though. So you're helping out your friends.
Yeah.
Until they die to your big 10/10.
Colossus. Exactly. Anything for free. Broodstar. Now this one is super big guy, costs a lot of money. 11. But he has affinity for artifacts, which again makes him cost less.
Yeah.
He is a flyer, and his power and toughness are each equal to the number of artifacts you control. So a flyer that's going to be super huge, hopefully. Is there nothing wrong with that? Also good in both decks.
Yeah. And then we've got Joyra, Ageless Innovator, recent card from Dominaria United for 2. Sorry, a blue and a red. You can tap her and put 2 Ingenuity counters on her. Then you may put an artifact card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is the number of Ingenuity counters on her. So they're going to need to deal with her. Otherwise, you're getting stuff for free.
And then we thought, why not check out what else the Magic universe has for Mishra? Because it's a Mishra deck, and Mishra's been around since the beginning of Magic the Gathering. So we thought, let's do a search. And guess what? We found lots of great cards that would go well in this deck that are Mishra themed. So Mishra, Artificer Prodigy for 1 and blue, black, red is a 4/4 human artificer. Whenever you play an artifact spell, you may search your graveyard, hand, or library for a card with the same name as the spell you put into play. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. So you probably won't find a card with the same name as the one you played, but it will get you a shuffle. It'll let you kind of search through your library, remind you of what's in it. It might be a good, fun thing to add.
Fun. Yeah. For flavor. Then we've got the new cards that just came out, that are coming out, or whatever. The new set, Brothers War. Mishra, this is the meld for the Mishra stuff. So meld is where if you have the other opposite card, you get to put those cards together. That makes a crazy card on the back of the 2 cards. They join together to make this other thing. So we've got Mishra, claimed by Gix, for 2, a black and a red, the 3/5. This is Mishra here. Whenever you attack, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Hopefully lots. If Mishra, claimed by Gix, and a creature named Phyrexian Dragon Engine are attacking, so you attack with those 2, and you both own and control them, exile them, and then meld them into the big Mishra lost to Phyrexia. Enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So if you've got both of these guys, the other one is the Phyrexian Dragon Engine. So it's a 2/2 with double strike. When it enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. So it has Unearth, which is for 3 and 2 red. You can play this from the graveyard. So it dies, you can bring it back. And then that whole thing, I'll let Leslie read because she can read sideways.
So it's going to meld, if that happens, it's going to meld into Mishra, lost to Phyrexia. So poor Mishra, he is lost to Phyrexia. He is a legendary artifact creature that is a 9/9. Whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to choose 3 of these from the list. So the first is target opponent discards 2 cards. Great removal. Mishra deals 3 damage to any target. Destroy target artifact or planeswalker. Creatures you control gain menace and trample until the end of turn. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 until the end of turn, which will get rid of all those little 1/1 tokens on the other side and create 2 untapped Power Stones tokens. So lots of versatility once he's out. He's a 9/9, and you get 3 things every time he attacks, and you can decide the order of which those things resolve. So crazy.
Kind of crazy. And then more Mishra stuff. Mishra's Bauble. If you've got it for 0 an artifact, you can sacrifice it and look at the top card of a target player's library. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep.
Yeah.
So
it has Wayfarer's Bauble in it, which is kind of the same, but I mean, theme
Mishra.
people. Theme. Mishra's Self-Replicator.
Yeah.
For 5, it's a 2/2, so yeah. But whenever you cast a historic spell, you can pay 1. If you do, you get to create a token that's a copy of Mishra's Self-Replicator. So it's just going to keep replicating itself and creating copy tokens of itself, which is just really super fun.
Then there's the Ankh of Mishra for 2. It's an artifact that says whenever a land enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to that land's controller. Mm-hmm. Could be dangerous to you, but
could be
not so much because you're going to make Power Stones for mana instead.
Yeah.
It's for that land matter person over there. Going to deal lots of damage to Leslie when she's playing all those lands.
Hopefully. Mishra's Command is our last tweak suggestion for X and a red. Choose 2. Target player. Choose target player. They discard up to X cards and they draw X cards for each card discarded. This way you can choose yourself if you need some card draw, or make a friend, or just make someone discard if they had all this stuff that they were like, yeah, I got an answer. Oh, well, Shauna, well, you think you have an answer for me? I'm just going to make you discard and draw a whole new set of cards. Or you can have the spell deal X damage to target creature. So nice removal. We said we needed some removal. Or you can do X damage to target planeswalker. Or you can target creature gets +X +0 and gains haste until the end of turn. So lots of options with Mishra's Command, and definitely I think would be a good add. This is is this a new card, I think?
Yeah, it is. I just got some.
Yeah, so really fun. Again, we wouldn't recommend taking all these cards and putting them into this deck. We would always recommend play with the deck a couple times first, see what you like about it, where you would like to increase it, and your tweaks and your play style is going to be different than someone else's. So tell us what you think.
Yeah. So that's it for this time. Thanks for watching, and we are available on YouTube. You can check out our other video of the other Commander deck that just came out there. Mm-hmm. And you'll find us on Twitch and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those fun things. We'd love to hear what you would do to tweak this deck and just hear from you and play Commander with you or whatever. We love talking to you guys. So that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime,
tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Bye, guys.